Okay, let's take a look at the five relationships. The five social relationships are what Confucius believes is the sort of foundation upon which society is going to be built. Remember, he lived in a time of chaos during the Warring States, and he wanted to end that chaos. For him, not only was filial piety important, but he also believed sticking to these five relationships was the way to make that chaos go away. So let's take a look at what he has to say. First of all, the chart's based on the idea that there are inferior and superior roles. So some people in the chart are going to be inferior to others, and others are going to be superior to them. In addition, each person has to fulfill their role without question. So if I'm looking at the chart, you can see someone like the ruler is actually in a superior position over the subject. But if you also notice, there's an arrow that has two arrows on it. So the arrows are representing a sort of a two-way street. And what that means is that although the ruler is in a superior position and the subject's inferior, the ruler also has some obligations. He's obligated to be good, to be moral, to be ethical, to do the right thing, and to be a good role model for his subjects. In exchange, the subjects are going to obey the ruler, do what they're told, and basically, obey the dictates that the ruler may issue. Now that also applies to the relationship between father and son. Yeah, the father is in a superior position over the son, but the father has some obligations. He has to be a good father. He has to be a role model for his son. He has to do the right thing. All right? He has to provide for his son. Now, the son, on the other hand, has to obey his father and adhere to his father's wishes and do what his father basically tells him to do. If dad's good, moral, ethical, and a good role model for his son, then the son will do that without question. Just like the subject's going to do that for the ruler, if the ruler is also good, moral, and ethical, too. So these sort of roles are really important. It's really important that people obey their role, that they stick to the role that they're supposed to do. Okay? So it looks like it might be unfair and uneven that the superior people get to tell the inferior people what to do, but in fact, both sides are obligated to sort of meet the needs of each other. That's why there's two arrows going in two different directions. Now, what does this mean? It's going to help society free itself from chaos. This looks like a rigid system, a rigid social system. Remember, what Confucius was trying to do was end chaos in the Warring States world in which he lived, and he thought that by having people adhere to these five social relationships, that would help bring an end to the chaos, especially if people fulfilled their roles. Okay, so let's move on and take a look at this. This is an example that comes from the Analects, the book written by Confucius, and it says, the governor of Shi, a place, said to Confucius, quote, in our village there is a man nicknamed Straight Body. When his father stole a sheep, he gave evidence against him, unquote. Okay? So the story of the stolen sheep is pretty simple. There's this guy in town, he stole a sheep. His kid basically turned in his father, gave evidence against him. All right? So that's the scenario that Confucius is confronted with. So what I want you to think about is how might Confucius respond? If I look back at the five relationship chart, I need to ask myself, what would Confucius think? What would Confucius think of this guy named Straight Body, who apparently turned his father in because his dad stole a sheep? Okay, now that you've had some time to think about this scenario and the chart below, I want you to maybe consider some of the possible options that might be available. All right, so first of all, how might Confucius respond? Well, some people might say that the son, down here on the bottom of the chart, is actually a bad son because he's turning his dad in. And that would be unfilial for his son to do that. He's not really obeying his father, and he's basically turning his dad in. So other people might say, well, actually, he's being a good subject because, in fact, as a subject, he's actually going to be doing what the ruler wants, so he's obeying the law. So the problem here is we got two different things. The son's not just a son, he's also a subject. So he's a son to his father, but he's also a subject to his ruler. So if he's going to be a good son, he has to obey his dad, and he has to cover up the fact that dad stole a sheep. But if he's going to be a good subject, he should really tell the ruler, because I'm sure the ruler has a law that says stealing sheep isn't good. What it's really about to Confucius is this, and that's son. Not son the individual, but the role of son. Remember, these are five social relationships. These are roles that people are supposed to adhere to. And what's important is that the son, whoever it might be, adhere to the role. He must fulfill his role as a good son. He must be filial. He must obey his parents, no matter what. And the father, again, it doesn't matter if the dad's a good dad or a bad dad, is irrelevant because the father has to fulfill his role as well. Now, even though dad in this case is not fulfilling his role and is stealing the sheep, okay, he's being a bad father, he's being a bad role model, that's not relevant. What's relevant is that the son still has to be a good son. He has to fulfill his role, even if dad isn't being a good dad. Just like a subject has to be a good subject, even if the ruler is not necessarily being a good ruler. What's important isn't the individual, but it's the role that the individual occupies. In this case, the child actually occupies the role of son. Alright, so let's take a look at this. The role of son is the first role that a child plays in life. So it's important. If a child is going to get the role of son really well, that means later in life he might actually be a really good elder brother. It might also mean that eventually he'll be a really good husband. And if he's a really good husband, he might one day even be a really good father. And potentially he'll be a really good subject. And that means that he'll actually master all the roles that he'll have to have in life. Again, he might even be a good friend. Who knows? He might even become a good ruler someday. But this is the case. If he doesn't fulfill his role as son, if he blows it as son and he gets it wrong, then he probably won't be a good friend, and he probably won't be able to master being a good brother, or a good husband, or a good father, or maybe even a good subject. And as a result, he won't ever get good at being any role in society, and that's not a good thing. Also, if the son basically decides to do whatever he wants to do and not be filial, then that's a problem as well. He's being an individual. And if the son goes off and does whatever he wants, then what's stopping the wife from her doing whatever she wants, or a younger brother doing whatever he wants to do, or subjects doing whatever they want to do? If everybody's off and they're doing their own thing, then what you're going to have is chaos. And that's exactly what Confucius was trying to get rid of. He's trying to limit chaos, and he's trying to bring order to society. You have order by everybody following their roles and sticking to their roles no matter what. But if everybody goes off and does their own thing, then society's going to fall apart. Okay, so if a child can master his first role, then he can master every role that follows. That's important. Okay, so what's the goal here of filiality? Filiality's goal is to teach a generation how to cooperate effectively so that they can be virtuous model citizens later.